Today, I'd like to speak about how we as physiotherapists are able to support people with Parkinson's to live well and to highlight and review some very recent evidence that can guide our practice. Parkinson's is a chronic neurodegenerative disorder. It is progressive and there is no cure. It's often diagnosed by its clinical symptoms, the triad of signs: rigidity or muscle stiffness, resting tremor, and hypokinesia or small and slow movement. It's widely thought to be due to the loss of dopaminergic cells in the substantia nigra, which is part of the basal ganglia, a very small part of the brain. We know that Parkinson's is progressive. It begins usually unilaterally and progresses to bilaterally. There's individual variation in progression and symptoms, and the rate of progression varies within each person. Although we often focus on the physical signs of Parkinson's, it's important to recognise that there are just motor signs on the left of my screen, but also non-motor symptoms such as depression, fatigue, apathy, problems with sleep that are an important part of the syndrome. And importantly, our physical treatments can also address these symptoms. If we use the International Classification of Functioning Disability and Health, or the ICF, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and consider the health state of Parkinson's and how that might impact on an individual, we can use the ICF model of disability to see that people experience many types of impairments in body functions and structures, difficulties within activities, and restrictions in engagement and participation in life and society. It's individual variation that we now recognise as important. Although we can look at very common symptoms, it's very important to recognise that each person with Parkinson's is different. If you look to the far left, you'll see that very historic image of a white older man stooped with Parkinson's on the side. We now have embraced a new image published in 2020 to really reflect on the diversity of people who live with Parkinson's. Although it affects more men than women, we certainly see women. It affects older people more so than younger people, but around 15% of people have younger onset Parkinson's. It affects people from diverse cultural backgrounds who may still be working while managing symptoms, such as the gentleman in the middle. And certainly we do see older people sometime further down the track, such as the image on the first right. But this new image of Parkinson's disease encourages us to reflect on the diversity of people who have this common disorder. The tide of Parkinson's disease is actually rising and spreading. This noteworthy paper published by experts in Parkinson's referred to Parkinson's as a Parkinson pandemic. We know that neurological disorders are the leading source of disability globally. Parkinson's is in fact the fastest growing neurological disorder, and disability and death due to Parkinson's are increasing faster than any neurological disorder, including stroke. It's very much driven by the ageing of our population, and really it needs to be considered as no longer something that is rare. If you consider the global population or the ageing of our society, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, if we look to the world population of those who are 65 and older, we can see that that was as anticipated to double between 2015, where there's 600 million, to over 1,200 million in 2040. So it will double. Similarly, Parkinson's is predominantly a disorder associated with aging. So again, we can see that Parkinson's is predicted to also rapidly grow, driven by aging, but also due to pesticides and lesser smoking and other factors. It's anticipated we'll have a global population of 17 million people living with Parkinson's by 2040. If we look to the global, regional, and national burdens of Parkinson's, it's difficult to get exact predictions. If we look at the estimates of the number of people living in India with Parkinson's, they're very uncertain, ranging from as low as 600,000 up to 7 million, my mistake. What we do know is that there are many people living with Parkinson's, and there will be many more. So we need more physios who'll work with people with Parkinson's. Indeed, I would say that every physio needs to know how best to support people with Parkinson's to live their best lives. So what can we do to help people with Parkinson's? Fortunately, the evidence is rapidly growing. If you do a simple PubMed search from the year 2000 onwards, over the last 20 years, you'll see that there's been a rapid increase in the amount of evidence that we have investigating the effect of exercise on Parkinson's disease. We're fortunate to have best evidence clinical guidelines. So they provide recommendations as to what we should do from the Europe, UK, USA, and others. What we do know is that over the last decade, we've seen a rapid shift, almost a transformation in the physiotherapy evidence-based. The very first Cochrane review to find a positive effect of physiotherapy was only 10 years ago in 2013. And this was the first Cochrane review to show that physiotherapist was definitively better than no treatment at all. We showed that it was effective to improve walking, motor function, mobility, falls, strength, balance, to also have changes that are effective on non-motor symptoms such as mood, anxiety, and sleep. And finally, and really importantly, quality of life. So here we are a decade on from this first review that showed comprehensively that we can be effective. Our current focus is shifting, not simply to have a look at exercise in itself, but to be considering which types of exercise can be effective for people with Parkinson's, and are there differences between them? So 10 years later, in 2023, we have a new Cochrane review. It's a brand new one, and it has a network meta-analysis that allows us to dig a little deeper. The really good news is that, again, we find positive evidence for the effect of a range of physio treatments. If you look at in the middle column, you see that the range of treatments that were examined within this review, and they looked at the effect of severity of motor signs and on quality of life. Again, really encouragingly, this review provides level 1 highest quality evidence that physiotherapy is effective. The highest confidence was actually looking at the effect of DAS on motor function, given that the evidence quality varied, and moderate confidence looking in particular at aquatherapy and the effect of quality of life. A very similar review was published in 2020 that again looked at a range of physiotherapy treatments and the effect of these on motor function, balance and gait, and quality of life. They quantified the effects graphically. So if you look to the bottom of this slide, you'll see that anything in yellow had a significant moderate effect size. Anything in light green had a significantly moderately large effect size. And in green with a outline had a significantly very large effect size of greater than 0.8. So again, significantly positive findings. If we look at these in detail, and you'll see the range of treatments down on the left, if we look to see those that are effective on motor symptoms, you can see the ones I've coloured. So conventional therapy, dance, martial arts, Nordic walking, and particularly the highest effect size was in aerobic therapy. If you look to those studies that have had an effect on balance, as measured by TUG and BBS, we saw again a range: strategy training, dance, Nordic walking, and you can see the ones that are now coloured on the left-hand side. If we look at the effect in gait, again, we see a range of effective treatments as coloured in on the left. All of the ones that are now coloured instead of black show either significant, moderate or moderate to large effect sizes. And finally, excellent findings in quality of life, again showing an effect. So again, compelling evidence that physiotherapy treatments have important effects on the symptoms of Parkinson's. We can also look at other particular types of evidence. In this recent systematic review and meta-analysis in 2022, we looked at mind-body exercise, this study looked at. So it looked at the effect of what is classified as mind-body exercise, including yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, Qigong, and dance, on functional performance and health-related quality of life. And again, the findings were positive. Pilates was the most effective in improving functional mobility and balance performance. Yoga and dance, the most effective in improving motor function. Qigong, the most effective in improving gait speed. And dance for quality of life. That really invites the question to us as to which exercise is best. What should we be doing? And again, we see a few papers that have addressed this. Currently, there's very limited evidence that one type of exercise is better than another. It really depends on the target of the exercise. What we need to consider in terms of uncertainties is what might be the right dose, what might be the right intensity, and what might be the right volume. However, this, I think, is excellent news. This is great news. What it really means is that we can consider a range of exercises for people. We consider their personal preference. They might prefer to do their exercise at home. They might prefer to do it in a local pool, aquatic therapy. They might like a gym. They might like to individually exercise or exercise as part of a group. There's a lot of scope for us to consider a range of exercises that we know might be effective. What we do know is that developing new exercise and activity habits can be hard. And so one of the most common quotes that we have in considering what the best exercise is for people with Parkinson's is to say to them that it's the one that you will actually do. And new evidence is really looking at the combination of both exercise and health behaviour changes to initiate and sustain exercise. If we look at exercise, we can also consider physical activity, and I'm sure you've done that much throughout the conference. We know that people with Parkinson's have low levels of physical activity. We know that they're 30% less active than their age-matched peers. And in fact, even when they are diagnosed, they are found to have less activity, less total activity, and shorter bouts of activity. That's an important finding because we know that physical activity matters. It has important health benefits for everyone, including people with Parkinson's. This was a very recent study in 2021 published in JAMA of the relationship between physical activity in people with Parkinson's and mortality. They found that people with Parkinson's who were physically active both before and after Parkinson's diagnosis had the greatest reduction in mortality rate across all of the intensities. So whether they were exercising at a vigorous, moderate, or light intensity active, people that were active rather than inactive had a lower probability of death. Similar findings applied to health-related quality of life. In following over 3,000 people over 2 years, it was found that those that consistently and regularly exercise had a smaller decline in health-related quality of life and mobility. And even adding 30 minutes a week meant that there was a slower decline in health-related quality of life. These, we can see, is important. And the importance of people beginning or continuing to exercise is it aligns with the recommendations of the WHO guidelines for people living with disability. We know that falls are also a big problem for people with Parkinson's. They occur commonly. 45 to 68% of people fall each year, and over 2/3 of those fall more than once, with an increased risk of fracture. A Cochrane review published this last year showed compellingly that exercise reduces the rate of falls by 26%, again suggesting to us that physiotherapy is very important. Much of these evidence has now been adapted into the World Guidelines for Falls Prevention for older adults in a special component for Parkinson's, providing both strong recommendations for people with Parkinson's across the lifespan. Parkinson's is rapidly increasing. It's a current priority of the World Health Organization, who've published a call to action in 2022. Stating that rehabilitation can help improve functioning and quality of life for people with Parkinson's. The areas for action include assured access to treatment, including access to an education of an interdisciplinary workforce trained in neurological disorders. That's us, that's physiotherapists, and we need to make sure we can deliver the best care that we can. So to finish, with some very short take-home messages that I hope capture what I've given my emphasis to. Exercise is a critical element of the treatment toolkit for people with Parkinson's. We have enough high-quality evidence to show that many types of exercise are effective and can address a range of symptoms. We know that developing long-term sustainable exercise habits are important, and we can tailor exercise to suit individual needs and preferences. As physiotherapists, we have a key role. For people with Parkinson's, we need to be there for them from the point of diagnosis to end-of-life care. Thank you very much for listening. I'll finish with that. And I'll stop sharing.
Does anyone have any question from our audience? Any question for ma'am? Dr. Jennifer, I think there's no question at this moment. And thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Please give a big round of applause for Dr. Jennifer. She's been very kind and have been waiting for the session. Thank you so much. And we look forward to have you sometime in India.
I would like that very much. Thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you've had a very successful meeting.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Have a great evening.